Wherever they went, the Arab conquerors were often welcomed as liberators by the oppressed and persecuted Jews and many Christians, particularly members of minority sects. However, in 656, the rivalries surrounding the succession to Muhammad developed into civil war. In 661, the victors, who were members of the old merchant aristocracy of Mecca, led by the Umayyad family, seized control of the caliphate. Their first move was to transfer the capital to Damascus, and from there they continued the thrust eastwards. Following the conquest of Herat and Balkh in 651, and the fall of Kabul in 664, the way was open to India and Central Asia. Sindh in northwest India was occupied in 712, and has remained Muslim ever since. Further north, the Arabs pressed on beyond the Oxus River, occupying Bukhara and Samarkand in 710, and reaching the frontier of the Chinese Empire, where they defeated the Chinese army at the Talas River in 751. This defeat severed the cultural ties between China and Central Asia, and marked the beginning of China's isolation from the West. By now, Islam was also a sea power, having occupied the dockyards at Alexandria. The Arab advance continued along the North African coast, overcoming resistance by the Berber tribesmen and crossing the Straits of Gibraltar into Spain in 711. Here, divisions amongst the Christians made conquest easy, and they continued north to Toulouse and the Rhone Valley, but they were defeated at Poitiers by the Franks in 732. It was only a frontier skirmish, but it persuaded the Arabs to withdraw into Spain. It was only in Anatolia and the Balkans that Islam failed to make any headway. 3 separate sieges of the Byzantine capital Constantinople in the late 7th and early 8th centuries failed to give Islam a foothold at the gateway to Eastern Europe. This did nothing to detract from Islam's immense achievements. The heart of the vast empire was secure. Islam as a religion was advancing and winning converts everywhere. The gathering together of so many different regions under a single rule stimulated commerce and inaugurated a period of great prosperity. Nevertheless, the end of this period of expansion marked a turning point. By now, the Arab descendants of Muhammad's original followers were in a minority everywhere. Secure within their citadels and garrisons, like this one at Kairouan in Tunisia, they lived comfortably off the taxes collected from their subject peoples. However, there was growing discontent amongst the non-Arab converts to Islam, who were excluded from the privileges enjoyed by the Arab ruling class. A small number of Arabs, mostly soldiers and officials, were prospering from the skills and industry of millions of conquered peoples, many of them heirs to higher and older cultures. Muhammad died without leaving any clear guidelines as to how his successors should be chosen in the future. Tragically, the seeds of a major conflict had been sown, a conflict which still divides Islam today. The Sunnis, the majority, claim that the Prophet's authority passed to the caliphs, leaders approved by the community. The Shi'is believe that Muhammad's authority passed to his cousin and son-in-law, Ali, and to his descendants, the Imams. Muhammad had united the warring Arab tribes under the banner of Islam, and it was his intention that Muslims should never go to war against Muslims. And yet, within 25 years of his death, conflict had broken out over the question of the succession to the caliphate. It may not have been fought with bombs and guns like the all-too numerous wars of today, but the cost in human suffering was equally great. And finally, it was that Arab civil war that led to the unseating of the Umayyads in 750. The seizure of power by the new dynasty, the Abbasids, brought major changes to the empire. the capital was transferred from Damascus in Syria to Iraq, where the second Abbasid Caliph, Al-Mansur, ordered the construction of a magnificent new city at Baghdad. The change of capital heralded the end of the unchallenged Arab domination of Islam, as power and influence gradually passed out of the hands of the conquering Arab minority to the millions of non-Arab Muslims. A multitude of nations and races lived under a common Islamic culture, united, along with the Arabs, by their belief in Allah and his messenger Muhammad. Throughout the empire, Arabic was the universal language. Under the Abbasid caliphs, this Islamic imprint led to a great flowering of Islamic art and culture. In the 9th century, the Caliph Al-Mamun, seen here in his bathhouse, established a house of science in Baghdad. Here, scholars studied algebra, astronomy, and the works of Euclid, Galen, and Aristotle were translated from Greek into Arabic, thus preserving much of the great classical heritage. However, by the middle of the 9th century, the unity of the empire began to falter. Over the next 150 years, the caliphs in Baghdad became mere figureheads. A number of local dynasties became established, and Abbasid rule declined. There were separate dynasties in Morocco, the Idrisids, in Tunisia, the Aghlabids, in Egypt, the Tulunids, precursors of the Fatimids, in the Yemen, the Zaydis, in Transoxania, the Samanids, and in Afghanistan, the Ghaznavids, who founded an extensive kingdom in northern India. With so much political fragmentation, why did the power and influence of Islam continue to flourish during the centuries that followed? A major part of the answer must lie in its religious toleration, a principle enshrined in the Quran. Islam did not insist upon conversion, and specifically protected the so-called people of the book, the Christians, the Jews, and the Persian Zoroastrians, a fact which explains the persistence of Christian and until recently Jewish communities in many parts of the Arab world. And so, during the 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries, under the patronage of the rich and the powerful, architects, artists, and scholars produced a magnificent testament to the skills and durability of Islamic art and culture. The Islamic ban on representing living figures, although not universally observed, contributed to the development of a rich repertoire of calligraphic forms. These were used in the decoration of religious texts, and also found architectural expression in highly decorated palaces and mosques.